to swear in council members?
Yes, we're going to do it all in one.
Yes.
Yeah, so if you want to do that now,
One big
because we don't
swearing.
start the meeting until after they're in.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, so if you would all please silence your cell phones, we're going to get started. We're going to start with swearing in of council members first, and then we'll start the meeting. So if all new council members will step up to the front so that you can be sworn in. Mr. McGinnis is sick today, and he was already sworn in the other day.
I
so-
was too, but you still want to...
Yes, please. Yeah, we're going to... For the public to see.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York and the City Charter of the City of Batavia, New York, and that you will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of councilperson until December 31st, 2023?
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Hey, all right.
Heidi?
Yeah, right.
Matter of going forward, there was a little discrepancy about titles, and I looked it up in the charter, and according to the charter, the official term is council member.
Oh,
Okay, so if you want to start with that going forward, I mean, somewhere along the line we changed it, not a big deal, but the official term is council member, all right?
got it.
Thank you very much. Now, if we will call this meeting to order and stand for the invocation by Councilperson Christian.
Thank you, Chairman. Please join me in the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven.
Give us this day
our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses,
as we forgive those who trespass against us, and lead us not into temptation.
but deliver us from evil. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we can't be a council person anymore? No longer a council person.
We'll start with the election for council president. So at this point, I open the floor for nominations. Mr. Bailey,
I nominate Gino Jankowski for council president.
any other nominations?
No nominations, I'm just seconding it.
Okay, second.
That was it, yeah.
Ms. Christian, any other nominations? Okay, so we'll take a vote.
Councilmember Veely,
Yes.
Vecino,
Yes.
Canali. Yes. Briggs,
Yes.
Christian.
Yes.
Perez. Yes. Bykowski.
Yes.
Jankowski.
Yes. Now we'll take nominations for council pro tempore. Did I pronounce right?
I'd like to nominate Councilmember Paul Veely.
Seconded?
Second it.
Ms. Briggs?
Yeah.
Any other nominations? Okay, call the roll, please.
Councilmember Perez.
Yes.
Bykowski.
Yes.
Jankowski.
Yes.
Veely.
Yes.
Vecino.
Yes.
Canali.
Yeah.
Briggs.
Yes.
Christian.
Yes.
Okay, a resolution appointing parliamentarian. Who would like that? That's Resolution 1, 2020. Resolution 2, 2020, the rules governing council business meetings, conference meetings, and council member rules. Mr. Briggs? Really, you want to start off?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I move a resolution appointing parliamentarian.
Seconded. Ms. Briggs, any discussion or concern? Mr. Bykowski?
Yeah, I had one concern here. It names George Van Ness as city attorney for a period of 2 years, but I'm just wondering if we should amend that to read that it would be a representative of George's firm, whoever the firm appoints to do that, because if George isn't here and they send someone else, then they're not the parliamentarian.
How does that work, George?
No, they are.
I think, broad strokes, it's the city attorney. I'm city attorney. If somebody appears in my stead due to sickness or inability to appear, they're acting as city attorney. So I'm comfortable with the parliamentarian being the city attorney if that's what you want to do.
Is this the way we've done it in the past, or we've done it exactly like that?
That's how we've always done it.
Always done.
Any other questions or concerns? All right. Call the roll.
Councilmember Veely?
Yes.
Pacino?
Yes.
Canali?
Yes.
Briggs?
Yes.
Christian?
Yes.
Karas?
Yes.
Bayakowski?
Yes.
Jankowski?
Yes. Resolution 2, 2020, Ms. Briggs?
Thank you, Council President. I move a resolution to adopt the rules governing council business meetings, conference meetings, and council member rules.
Seconded. Mr. Veely? Any questions, concerns? Can you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Briggs?
Yes.
Christian?
Yes.
Karas?
Yes.
Bayakowski?
Yes.
Jankowski?
Yes.
Veely?
Yes.
Pacino?
Yes.
Canali?
Yes.
Okay, motion to adjourn? Canali, seconded. Mr. Veely? Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Canali?
Yes.
Briggs?
Yes.
Yes.
Christian?
Yes.
Bayakowski? Jankowski?
Yes.
Veely?
Yes.
Pacino?
Yes.
And I'll call to order the special conference meeting. The first item for discussion is the amendment of the 2019-2020 budget to reflect the receipt of $300,000 from New York State Main Street grant. Does anyone have any concerns or questions in reference to that? So are we in agreement to move that to tonight's business meeting? This is time sensitive, that's why I added on here. Normally, we wouldn't do this, but these are things that have to be acted upon right away, so. Okay, that gets moved over. To authorize the Batavia Development Corporation to administer the 2020 New York Main Street grant. Are there any questions or concerns in reference to that? Okay, so we're in consensus to move that to tonight's business meeting as well?
Yes.
Okay, that gets moved over. Resolution appointing the part-time city court judge. Marty, would you explain, or somebody would explain what happened?
In honesty, not much. Council President, members of council, after the original resolution was submitted to the Office of Court Administration, there was simply a question and / concern about the reference in the first paragraph that included Uniform City Court Act 2104C, and the OCA felt that they'd rather have the reference to the general section of 2104, even though that was the form of the prior resolution that had been used by the city in the past.
Yeah, we've used this for 7 years now, right?
Exactly. There's no concern with the appointment. Everything was valid, fine, and appropriate in December when I was appointed. They simply asked that the resolution be modified slightly to reference section 2104 as it stood.
So we can't, and we couldn't just amend that, we have to go through this whole process again.
They simply asked for another resolution. I advised that we were not going to have another regular meeting until January 13th, and that was fine to OCA.
So did that affect the court system
Not at all.
or judge appointment or anything else?
Not at all, and they were somewhat apologetic about it, but simply suggested that they wanted the general reference and not the specific reference, even though that was used in the prior resolutions.
Okay.
So that is the one change made to the first paragraph of the whereas clause, and then there was a reference to a second further resolve clause that would be effective nunc-pro-tunc, which is from before, so.
Okay. All right.
Yes,
So
they-
that's why we're doing this again. It was just it's a paperwork thing, and the state just wants this. Now, what's the agency that requested this change?
New York State Office of Court Administration, the administrative folks out of Buffalo.
Okay, so any other discussions or concerns about that? So we in consensus to move that over to tonight's business?
Yes.
Okay. Motion to adjourn. Mr. Karas, seconded by Mr. Bayakowski. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Karas? Yes. Bayakowski?
Yes.
Jankowski?
Yes.
Veely?
Yes.
Pacino? Canali?
Yes.
Briggs?
Yes.
Christian?
Yes.
Okay. Call to order the regular business meeting. You've all received copies of December 2019 minutes. You've had a chance to look them over. Are there any concerns or omissions or questions? Mr. Knapp?
Just one change. In the section where we were responding to public comments at the last meeting, it's noted that Councilman Canale respected what Mr. Roach said, but felt there was a great staff at the city who could get grants so the taxpayers would bear all the costs. This is in reference to the ice rink. And then it continues to say he thought we could ask others for, I'm sorry, said we could get grants so the taxpayers would bear all the costs. It should be that the taxpayers would not bear all the costs.
Right.
I just want to go on record.
Right.
I want the taxpayers to bear all the costs.
Yeah.
Well, so you're saying like 20 years from now, when someone's looking at
50 years from now, they're going to say, see that canal?
Okay, so any other corrections? Obviously, it's a typographical error, but
I apologize.
that's why this is exactly why I recommend you guys read them over. I always read them myself, and you can catch stuff like that. I must have blew right by that, so. Anyone else? Okay, those will be corrected. We'll sign the agenda items now. Item 3, 2020, the revolving loan fund grant award. Who wants that one? Just so you know. 4, 2020, the one we moved from the special conference, the New York State Main Street grant, number 4, 2020, Mr. Veely. 5, 2020, the BDC to administer said grant, Mr. Canale. 620, the part-time judge amended resolution. Ms. Christian. I meant 6/20/20. Communications.
Nothing for tonight.
Next City Council conference meeting will be held Monday, January 27, 2020, 7 p.m. at the City Hall Council Boardroom, second floor, City Center. I did receive a complaint, and I forwarded it on in reference to the meetings. At some point, will we list all the meetings on our webpage, and so that the public can look ahead and see when and where? They're on there now. Okay, very good, thank you. City Attorney's report?
Yes, Council President, members of council, we are working on the same basic list of matters I've reported on in the past, but there is one other matter I wanted to bring to your attention. Obviously, Chief Highbush and I have spoken to council about the criminal discovery reforms over the last few months. We received word last week from the city court judges who are going through some Office of Court Administration training that OCA views the mandatory automatic criminal discovery as applying to code enforcement cases in New York State, in addition to general criminal, misdemeanor, and felony cases. And traffic cases. So, there's always a possibility that was going to be the case. They're not really criminal in the general sense that you would think that they are, and obviously we see code compliance, not criminal liability with respect to fines or any sort of incarceration. But nonetheless, that's OCA's position as to how the statute should apply. There's a possibility of some refinement. Obviously, many of us have read about some of the more egregious examples of what's going on with bail reform and discovery. I spoke to NICOM last week after we had this word, and they are working with the governor's office. NICOM indicated to me that this is the top priority on their list of priorities to try to refine some things with bail reform as well as discovery. But be that as it may, we are working towards doing automatic discovery in the code enforcement cases. Whether or not that's really necessary remains to be seen given the nature of the cases, but we have met with the director of DPW and the code officers. I met with them last week. We're putting in place a system vis-a-vis our office to handle the service of these discovery responses and to be compliant when we appear in the code cases in court. Generally, we've already provided this discovery along the way, so it's not as though we're providing additional information to code defendants. It's just there's additional certification requirements, there's additional record-keeping requirements, and it's, with due respect to the legislature, not really something that should extend to this level of case because it's just over-documentation, I would submit. But we're working on that. We have a system that we're putting in place to handle it, and at the end of the day, it's probably not going to be that significant as it would be, unfortunately, in the criminal arena that our police department and the DA's office is dealing with. So just wanted to update.
How do parking tickets in this too, or must have forgot about those? Because I heard.
The VTL cases are in there. I don't know specifically the parking tickets are in there, but there's going to have to be further development of this. What the statute talks about is how the cases are initiated. So if those types of cases are initiated through informations or simplified informations, there's arguably a possibility that that would be picked up. And again, I would submit, as we talked, the chief and I talked to you a month and a half, 2 months ago, the breadth of the statute is picking up a lot of unintended consequences, and the scope of this documentation requirement is really, I would submit, overkill from the standpoint of a code compliance case that's seeking New York State Uniform Building Code and Fire Code compliance as opposed to criminal misdemeanor or felony exposure. But as the statute stands, we're going to do what we have to become consistent with it and deal with it so that we can appear in court on behalf of the city and advise the court that we are certifying to the readiness for these cases. So.
Good. City manager, any questions for the city attorney? City manager's report?
Well, I should anticipate the microphone fading in and out too, I guess.
Yeah, that's something we need to look into maybe.
Yeah,
We
no
keep saying
kidding.
that, but it just drives everybody crazy.
Yeah,
You can't hear anything.
Yeah.
I put some items on here because we knew there were items that council members would ask if we didn't come in and give an update, so I thought we could just give an update. On the first one, on the stadium parking, the police chief has issued a traffic order, and they are working on getting signs to be able to put up over there. Along that one stretch of Union Street, right along where the entryway is over there, so we're going to have a better situation come next football season. The Department of Public Works actually asked under my comments if they could provide an update on one or two things that they've got going on. I believe one of them is in relationship to some water line replacement.
Good evening, council members. A few items that the department has been working on for a while, and they've kind of been straggling around and things are starting to come together, so we thought it was important to bring council up to speed because some legislative action will be required on your part coming in the near future. Approximately a year and a half ago, we had petitioned council to allow for applying for transportation improvement program funds through the federal highway we targeted 4 streets, Harvester Avenue, Richmond Avenue, Bank Street, and Jackson Street, and Ray Tort did an awful lot of the work on providing that application. We were notified, and those applications were all put in separately as per what the request of the program was. We were notified in the summer that we had received funding for 2 of the projects, Richmond Avenue and Harvester Avenue. However, they were programmed in different years. So one was going to be constructed in 2022, the other one would have been 2023, and they were very similar projects, same type of construction, you'd use the same type of contractor, your design, everything else would be pretty much the same. So we petitioned them to combine those projects into one program, and we just received notice here in the last few weeks that the Genesee Transportation Council, along with New York State DOT, has approved combining Harvester Avenue and the Richmond Avenue into one project with a anticipated construction of 2022 coming, so the same year. So what some of the next steps will be coming will be agreements with New York State, things of that nature, to approve the project, the funding that goes along with it. But in total, it's over $2 million worth of work. The budget right now is $2,041,000, 80% of which will be reimbursed through federal highway funds. It is anticipated that these projects will also be eligible for what we refer to as Marchicelli funding, which is an additional state revenue source that will bring the city's match down from about $400,000 down to about $50,000 if we receive those Marchicelli funding programs, which typically we do. So that's very positive. We feel Richmond Avenue has been, a targeted street for an awful long time. These are rehabilitation projects, so it's really a very heavy maintenance project. It's not a complete reconstruction, but obviously each street being about $1 million, you can imagine it's a significant construction project. So we did want to bring that to council's attention. You will start to see those supplemental agreements, everything that goes along with it. We're trying to get the ball moving to get design professionals on board and make sure that we hit the wheels running on this so that those projects move forward in a timely fashion. The second item is New York State has targeted areas, typically urban, lower income, quite often distressed cities, if you will, for lead service line replacements. The city does have lead service lines in its system. So the city received a grant of $554,000 to replace lead water services. There's no city match as part of that. There's no application process, so that's why City Council has not heard about this previously, any authorization for the grant. So we have worked on putting together the work plan on that, submitting that to the state, identifying the area that we think is going to be where we have a pretty high confidence of lead service lines and start that replacement, and we may get that work going this fall as well. So two very important things, and we thought very positive things, about $2.5 million worth of work, which the vast majority of it is being funded through either New York State or federal highway. So we want to bring that to the council's attention. You will start to see agreements and all that coming forward in the next few council meetings. Okay?
Any questions?
Before you run off, when you say lead service lines, is that from the main to the shut-off or from the main to the home?
In some areas, it can be all the way to the home. In the city of Batavia, we are not aware of any that go all the way to the house. So to our knowledge, the only actual lead material service lines are from the water main to the shut-off.
Thanks.
Thanks, sir.
Back to the streets project. Matt, why is it put off until 2022? Why are we talking about 2 years from now? What's the reason for that?
Certainly. The regulatory part of these federal highway administered projects are pretty significant. There's environmental surveys that are done ahead of time. I could give you a whole list of acronyms that go along with it, which certainly you don't need. But the design process, approval process, the whole bidding process it takes 2 years to get it done. The other item that goes along with it, Councilmember Canale, is that these programs are typically put out over a 3-year period. So it's when they program the money for each year. So that's when it gets slotted when the funds are available for the federal budget. And of course, the federal budget is, I think, October 1st, which kind of throws your construction schedules all in a tizzy on its own. But we were very concerned originally because Richmond Avenue, the original award was 2023. So we were happy they combined them and moved them both into 22 and didn't combine them and move them out to 23. So,
I asked that question because obviously that's in my ward, and
certainly
that's all I hear.
Oh.
I don't hear a lot of complaints, but that one I hear almost weekly.
I've heard rumor of it myself. Yeah.
Ms. Christian?
Matt, thank you very much. Harvester Avenue certainly needs it, believe me. But also, I wondered if the lead surface lines, if any of them are going to be in the 6th Ward to take care of.
It's a little early to tell, but however, a couple of the areas that we have targeted where we have a high confidence lead services are in the 6th Ward, yes.
Swan Street, parts
Could
of
be.
Ellicott,
Could be.
Harvester.
Well, you're probably up to about $2 million right now, so I've only got $554,000.
Yeah, we'll find out soon enough. I mean, you're going to target what you feel the most.
That's part of it is we've done some preliminary investigation. There's areas that we had some high confidence there were lead services. We went in and did some vacuum excavation and come to find out they were all galvanized. So, but we are trying to hit concentrated residential areas where we can get obviously the best bang for our buck. You get that contractor and you just go here, to the next, to the next, to the next. So, we want to try to do 100 services and not 50 of them if we can do it that way.
Thank you.
Okay?
Any other questions? Thank you.
Sure thing.
Continue on.
Dear Committee is going to be coming together and meeting. I have talked to 1 or 2 of the Dear Committee members already, and hopefully we have someone from council.
Mr. Jeremy here, Councilmember Carras is going to be,
No, he's with he's on the mall steering committee.
I'm sorry, I sent it out recently. Did anyone express an interest in wanting?
I don't have deers in my area, so I'm not worried about it.
Councilmember Canale will gladly do it.
Sounds good.
You're on the mall steering committee. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Okay,
I sent
good,
it out and I heard no response back. I totally forgot about it.
good,
Thank you, there you go.
good. We will be proceeding with the meeting hopefully before the end of the month, if not in the 1st or 2nd week of February. We want to get that kicked off and moving. So,
Right.
the police station request for proposal on the feasibility study and, trying to get the opinion of probable cost. We appreciate the Department of Public Works getting the draft started, and we got a draft we're working on, and we'll be getting that out, I'm sure, pretty shortly, and getting that moving along as well. And that's, of course, over there on Alva Place. The manholes on Route 98, It's an interesting conundrum with the manholes on Route 98. There has been some discussion, and been confirmed back to me, at least somewhat, that the realignment of the road, I don't know what year it happened, it was while I was still sunbathing in the Southwest. Switched it and pulled those over, and so the manholes, instead of being out of the way of the cars, are smack, and the semis and all that are now smack in the middle of them. Our Public Works Department, if they want to chime in, they're welcome, but the basics of it is that they have been talking with the Department of Transportation and working on a plan. So I know that they will be working a plan this year on dealing with some of those manholes over there, especially with some of the noise that comes from those. And they can be dangerous when they split apart, or if they start popping off and rolling around and that type of a thing. The next thing I wanted to update the council on, there have been a lot of reports, obviously nationally, even locally, and here in the community, even here in the city, of internet and intranet security and the relationship of emails that are coming out that appear to be from certain management or elected officials, and honestly, they're not. I've spoken with AIS, our computer people, and they said, well, that there is quite a bit of going on of what they call spoofing and also phishing types of expeditions that some of these programmers are doing. And we're asking everyone to be extremely careful on emails. If you receive an email that appears to be, and I'm saying this for the public as much as, and our employees as much as I am for you as council, be careful, because it's the click of the link that starts the cyber attack. And one of those most often. That is the most often used, and there have been talks amongst the various levels of cybersecurity efforts from our State Department of Homeland Security people here in Albany, talks amongst the city and county managers. We had a session on that in our last training session, and one of the things we're encouraging, I don't know how members will feel or how your technology is you have things called the internet and you have something called the intranet. The intranet is confined within the organization, in this case the city of Batavia, and we're trying to encourage those who can switch over to a City of Batavia email to consider doing so, that it would be a lot safer and more secure. And in addition, if there's information out there that of a sensitive nature, to be extremely careful with that and find an alternative means to communicate it or bring it by. There's just too many. We're starting to have some incidents of these types of things happening. I know that Rachel and working with cybersecurity is going to be one of the things that they're going to be looking at as we continue through with the conversion on the computers. So I wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. We're trying to be extremely careful. We're not the only ones. This is happening all over the United States. We've been fairly fortunate in that we have had some diligent employees who are paying attention to, is there a signature on this form, or does this look quite right, or is the spelling right over here? And those are the kinds of things that are thrown into those spoofing type of emails that can result in attacks. So
anything that tells you to install something so you can view it, be very suspicious of that. And
Right.
we kind of received one from, I think they spoofed your email.
They did mine, so it went
And
to
then they
everyone.
spoofed mine and sent an appointment out to everybody, like a meeting appointment, so.
right.
It was a real meeting, so it looked real, but Mr. Canale.
When you talk about the intranet, Marty, and you encourage us to use a city email, is that an email that would be used just for our internal communications?
Yes.
Or is that also something that our constituents can access to send us questions?
There is a type of there's a mechanism built into our email service where they can actually send a question and it will get forwarded to emails. I get those. So there are ways for constituents to be able to respond. A personal suggestion of dealing with cybersecurity as long as I have, if you're talking to your constituents, Yeah, we can work something out on that. It's better than getting your personal email jammed up and messed up. I actually had an email that was conducting business that was in a Yahoo account. This was about eight years ago, and there ended up being an attack in there. It was a virus attack in on mine, and I ended up losing every single one of those emails, and they were all corrupted, and I couldn't touch them. Ended up going to the intranet. I'm not saying it's perfect, but most of the problems went away.
Well, the reason why I asked that, Marty, is because on our website, we have our cell phone numbers listed, we have our internet
Right.
email address listed so people can get in contact with us.
Yes.
Can we change that over somehow?
Yes.
For the public to contact us via email, but through this internet service?
I'm sure that we can do that. The technology is there.
Maybe that's what we need to do then.
So maybe I can clarify. When you log into your city server or your city email, and you send an email to one of us who are also on the server, you're never really leaving the building. That's the intranet, okay? It's like city employees emailing the police department, the fire department, whatever. It basically stays on our server in our building, and they're accessing it there.
Correct.
So that makes it a little safer between our inter-council communication. If you want to, the public should be able to get a hold of you, I totally agree. On email, they'll email you at your city account. The city will take different safeguards on their server that you might not get with a Yahoo account or another outside account. And like he said, if Yahoo gets corrupted, they don't have backups. They're not worried about saving all those saved emails you have.
And that's what I'm saying, on the city site though,
Right.
they have my personal email.
Right, they can change that, they can give you a new email address,
And
we'll
they
change
change
that
it,
out,
yes.
right.
Yeah.
And the other thing to do is, you're also responsible for FISA, FOIL, not FISA, that's something I've been reading about. FOIL, so in other words, if someone wants freedom of information, you'd have to go into your whatever account and get that, where if it's all, in my case, I keep everything on the city server, it's real easy to come here and print it out, and my personal emails aren't mixed in with all that. And it's a lot easier to just keep it separate. So it's probably good for many reasons. If you don't already have, I would strongly suggest you getting a city email as long as you're a council member and use that email for professional business.
Right.
And keep your personal email for personal things. Okay, that's probably the simplest way to explain.
And who do I contact to do that?
I think you just get with the assistant city manager, and she's working with our IT consultants. So.
And just so you know, there has been some concerns in the past that somebody with the right admin password could read your emails. If they do that, they have to change your password to do it. So the minute you go to log in and your password's not the same password, that would be an indication that somebody obviously changed the password to view your emails, and then that would all be logged somewhere, and we would be able to find out who is unauthorized to, who's looking at your emails without permission. So it's not as easy to just sneak in there, look at emails, and get out. It's pretty secure. The only way to do it is to change the password. It's done that way for a reason. It's a Microsoft thing. So, anyone else? Any questions? Okay, thank you. Anything
Yeah,
else you'd like to say?
just one briefly update. We had a good conversation with Empire State Development on the $1 million DRI grant for the city center for the mall. They are aware of the feasibility study that's going to be kicking off. I have talked for Councilmember Cross, I have talked with Mr. Flynn, the consultant on that, and we'll be looking for a kickoff the first part of February and possibly getting a pre-meeting of that before that happens. There'll be an announcement coming out. So that's also going to be moving. Now that we've got the budget preparation documents in order. So wanted to make sure you knew that. And as part of that, and one of the questions that we had talked to them about was we have design for the silos, which are the entryways, and then we have that one small piece of roof over there near JCPenney, which is eligible to be paid for out of this DRI grant funds, and we told them those designs have been done. Obviously there's some minor updates. Matt Worth and I sat in on that phone call. So we feel that we're in a position to be able to get some work done on things that don't affect the feasibility study while we're working on the feasibility study. So that way we can be kind of doing two things at the same time.
Right. And there's other, I mean, this, I would hope this would be the year that there'd be shovels in the ground in some of these DRI projects. They should be all starting
Shovels,
at that point.
shovels in the ground, lifts in the air, scaffolds on the buildings. That's the goal in 2020.
Okay, very good, thank you. Anyone else? Anything else? Go ahead.
Excuse me, the Ellicott Street project. I know at one of our meetings, council member Bayakowski said, that property, there's like a lot of code violations. There's the broken glass, the broken windows and stuff. Is that being cleaned up? When is that, you talk about shovel in the ground, when's that happening?
That has actually been directed. I spoke with Steve Hyde, who was meeting with with Mr. Severino, and he has also received official letter from the city directing that those be taken care of. So the ball is in the developer's court, and the responsibility is his to follow through. We asked that get done. There's no reason to delay it. So we have asked that get done. We'll see where that goes. The grant itself, they did get the grant application in. It's for quite a bit. I would have to let the BDC or Mr. Savarino himself talk about the details, but we know it's in. At this point in time, it's in internal review, so we'll see how it goes.
Does he have a time?
They boarded up the windows. Because I just went by there today, and there's boards up.
That is actually in response to a direct request from my office that they get on that and get that started. So it would have had to have been within the last 2 or 3 days.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, committee reports.
Short report from BID. Tomorrow they'll be helping take down the Christmas lights that we've enjoyed for the season in preparation for the next fundraiser, which is called February, BREW, which is a craft beer tasting along the line of the wine tasting.
You know she's not going for it.
No, I know Rose won't be there. It's February 22nd, and the arrangements are being made, and last year it made some money for them.
Good.
That's all we have is drunks and
Yeah,
Batavia.
We like to serve booze to everyone.
Public comments? Unfinished business? Okay, new business.
Yes.
Your budget presentation and state of the city? So I
Gonna
need,
be-
you got projector thing?
We do, we've got
Council
PowerPoint.
President, excuse me, council member.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I had a question for new business. I have a group of people that want to meet over at the youth center in February. We want to be abreast of some of the things that are happening in through our neighborhood, and we want leaders from different streets that we can work with our police and get some things going here. But it has to be in the evening, not a Saturday morning. These people, all of them work. So I need a meeting in February for
So you're
them.
talking like a ward meeting kind of?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Would you rather have it here? I don't know if that would be, what if it's not available? I mean, it's.
Well, I don't care. I don't care as long as we have the meeting and there's enough room for people to come in. I mean, we have some problems and we have to handle them. We can't wait, okay? Especially with this nonsense with the governor and this damn bail reform and tickets and everything else. Ridiculous.
All right.
Chief,
Yep, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I want to just back up to unfinished business as well. Does anybody on council object to me taking the next step in looking into how we might be able to control some of the truck traffic throughout the city and on 98? I've talked to some outside people that have some nice suggestions for me, and I'm not a big committee member. I don't want to put another committee together and just start studying something else. But I'm thinking there might be some steps that I might take, preliminary steps that I might take before we get into any kind of a formal action or formal committee. Does anybody object here on council for me to take that next step?
As long as you include Route 63 in Batavia,
Well, that's-
okay,
that's
fine.
obviously
I mean, I don't see any reason why you can't look into it and let us know what
Sure.
you find. I mean,
That means a lot on South Main.
That's right.
Instead of forming another committee at this
no,
point.
no, if you have
Come
questions, look
for
into it and see
minute.
what information you can find
I've
out.
gotten some good feedback from some of my constituents that have made some suggestions, and I thought, this is the type of thing that I could do on my own time, and then come back to you guys and say, hey, this is what I found, maybe now's the time to form a task force.
Yeah, take a look at it. Why not? I don't have a problem. Anyone else have a problem with that?
I appreciate that.
Hey, see what turns out. All right, do I need to move or something so you can use the projector?
Screen's coming down.
All right.
Yeah, we can scoot right over here. Run over your purse. You're good, you're good. Okay.
What's he presenting?
Okay, so I passed the first test. I was able to get the screen down and stop it before it hit the floor. So there you go. Welcome by the way, we have several of Batavia's finest with us here tonight. They had other meetings and decided to come on over, and I'm glad to see them. State of this, I thought I'd give us a little bit, before we get into the budget, again, this is 50,000-foot views, some snapshot highlights. There are a number of them that have happened throughout the last year and throughout the current fiscal year up to this point. This is one I was debating what to put up there, on the front, and this year I felt it was good for the kids, for our youth, to acknowledge that we have a major endeavor. And the reason I say have is that's a ribbon cutting, but the ribbon cutting is the start. That's when you start working out the kinks, and that's when you start working on this, and you start working on that. So compliments out to the city staff that have been involved with this ever-evolving situation. It started with 1 or 2 children, and now it's up to dozens of children now coming in, which is a good thing. And the survey that was shared with me was that most of the children seemed positive, and that yes, they were going to be recommending it to their friends, and apparently that sneaker net is working. So that's a positive thing for the youth of this city. This particular one, just reminding you, this is back in the days of sunshine and in August, when this was actually dedicated after a significant amount of work by our youth bureau. Our new assistant city manager was, of course, involved with them, and a number of people actually throughout the community, different organizations. If I tried to name one, I probably would miss one because there have been several. So we just say, thank you. This is a chance to say thank you, and as much as to say it was a significant step to move from a small building where we had maybe 10 or 15 to now where you have dozens of children that are coming in and taking advantage of some of these programs. Just this last December 20th, three more of our new recruits. I'm not sure if they like the idea of their pictures up there, but there you go anyway. Graduated. This was from the Erie County Academy. We have, if not there, we're extremely close to all vacancies filled, which has not happened in a long, long time. And the challenge now is getting us in a position where they feel, we feel we can get retention of officers, but the officers that we have had coming through the academies and in field training, particularly in the last 3 to 5 months, the word I've gotten back is they're doing a very, very good job. The trainers have been challenged, particularly at one point in time. I think there was just about one person in field training almost per field training officer that we had. So it stretched the resources, and my hats are off to the crews for that. Steve didn't want me to put this one here, but I think it's important to note that it's not always, there are challenges when you sit in the negotiating room with collective bargaining, but the International Association of Firefighters was talked about, because of certain rules in relationship to cities themselves funding employee luncheons. They said, hey, we'll step up to the plate. And so the International Association of Firefighters invited all city employees over, and back in October, it was good. I think we had someone from most, if not all, departments coming along. So that was good. And Chief, the hot dogs were good. A couple of them are a little bit on the spicy side, but other than that. So a good job. And honestly, to me, that's a healthy sign, a sign of something when employees want to band together and work together. This was taken on October 11th. Had the privilege of seeing the MRAP, or the armored vehicle that's to be used for the emergency response team, roll into town. I will have to say that the ERT commander did have a little bit of fun in the driver's side of that when it first came in, but other than that, I know it's undergoing a lot of things, and they're making good progress on that. And hopefully, at some point here, the maintenance and the police chief will be able to let us know when that's going to be actually hitting the road and working with us. It is designed to be able to deal with significant situations from a defensive posture, but the other nice thing about it, as in a reminder, is that it can go a lot of places during floods and with a lot of debris around and getting off the pavement that other vehicles just can't go. So it's going to be a good emergency response vehicle. We had one of our officers, and he didn't know this, but you got to know when you get your picture taken by the city manager, there's a chance. Our officer, Reisinger, was best top overall performance in his academy class when he graduated on September 11th of 2019. So our hearty congratulations to them. I think it's an indicator and a sign of some of the quality of individuals that are recruiting into the department at this time. This is something that happened back in August, and we're all smiling here. I don't know if we were all smiling at the time of the meeting, but it was an interesting exchange of issues and ideas in relationship to what is working with the city and the county in relationship to immigrants that come in, particularly the farm immigrants with the agriculture industry. So there was a good discussion there, in addition to some discussion about can we open up at some point in time and discuss some potential economic opportunities. So sometimes you get these kind of meetings and you take them and you wonder where they go. This one seemed, I think, in the end to go in a fairly positive direction. This one, the bottom of the slide was out of date and gone. This is where it was complete, and this is where they were coming in and starting to put in the new slide over at Austin Park so that we could have a safer playground facility over there for our children. The other one had just worn out, was cracking in the bottom, so the city found a way financially within the budget to be able to fix it and got it done. This one was noted by some of our local news agencies as probably the story of the year, was the honoring of David Batavia. And we appreciate and extend again our appreciation to everyone who took part and everyone who was part of the organizing and putting together of that event. It went over extremely well. I believe the comment to our confidential secretary was, it was done with the precision of a military operation, well done. And then, of course, our first responders that were there got a chance, and several other people actually, and he was very gracious and took time to talk with veterans and citizens and children and enough media to cover the entire front area in front of City Hall. So this was out in May. There was a request from the City Council to start raising awareness and issues at the Bank Street crosswalk. And that was an issue that the city council asked us to take and go with. So we decided to do at least an inaugural event. Was very pleased to see that the United Medical Center, Dan Ireland, representatives from YMCA, from the Senior Center, from the Boy Scouts, from Go Art, from just about literally everybody on that side of the street came together and worked with us. And at least while we had our vests on and were helping people across the street, people stopped at the motorists stopped. And we actually had a few people who were crossing up the street away from the crosswalk. They saw us there, so they walked down to the crosswalk just to see what was going on. And they said, well, I guess we better cross here. It's never a perfect world, but anytime we can raise attention and awareness. The other thing that's good about this is that they have gone internal to their organizations, to their children, taking things home to their parents, and the hospital to their clients and others, reminding them of the need to be careful in this area. That was some of Go Art's contributions there on the east and west side. Back to the Memorial Day Parade, of course, it's an annual event. I happened to capture a few people as they're going to gathering places. A couple of council members will recognize themselves there. I wasn't able to get the walkers because I was walking. But we did catch a couple of them. There was pretty good participation. One thing I didn't know, and honestly until this parade, was that the fire department, we have 5 members that belong to the Buffalo Firefighters Pipes and Drums. That's on their own time, of course. So they were invited and participated together with our fire department. The United Way Day of Caring had hundreds, if not hundreds of people involved. One of the areas that obviously we had was the community garden. And so that was the area that was worked on there, and that's what you can see afterward. Before, it was all full of weeds and all kinds of stuff, and there was a lot of work done. If you see in the back, they put in a number of new beds. They've drawn some additional people in there. And fortunately, the fencing is still holding and the deer are staying out. So just thought I'd add that. This was with the Historic Preservation Board. I like to drop in with the boards and see how they're doing. And this just happened to be in April when I was coming in, and they had received and chose to unveil one of their historic preservation signs. I believe this one's over on James Street. Some of this goes to the wayfinding and things that we're talking about with economic development that I'm sure there'll be some more discussion about in coming days, months, those types of things. But it's interesting, you know, that they're working on things in a positive direction and with property owners and helping them to move things along that are important to them. This one was, I'm not going to call it an enjoyable night on Union Street. Mr. Bayakowski can probably relate to this one. Over there, this was in January of last year, so almost a year ago, when it was extremely cold. And we had a major rupture of our main water line there. That was one of the water lines that was replaced in this year's projects, and so we're hopeful that that's going to be doing better. Those are some of the highlights. There are a lot of other ones. We have had some good activity. One of the other things I just did want to tell you, generally speaking, is that we had 3+1 investments was something we had brought to City Council. They have been very good to work with, and we are working with them. And without, I mean, there's not much information I can disclose at this point in time, but I can tell you that it's our feeling that favorable investment rates are coming the city's way. So we feel very good about what they're working on. We'll let them, you know, present the details. And we'll be inviting them to provide the council an update. We have some strategic priorities. There are several, but I'm touching on some of the highlights of ones. The biggest one, obviously, is the one that was started during previous city managers. $100 million, I'm all in. One of the things that I found significant from 2018 to 2019 is that $35 million worth of projects that were started either in 19 or earlier have been completed. So we're up to $50 million in completed projects. We've got about $15 million in progress, and these are projects that are directly related to the city and that impact the city's tax base. And we still, even with that kind of a movement, we have some other projects moving into the pipeline now, so that we're looking at planned projects of about $78 million. So if anyone wants to do the math, it's a little over $140 million in planned investments, and I'll get into why that's important here for us here in just a minute. One of the other things is obviously fixing the mall concourse roof. I've heard stories going back as far as 30 years from some of the local merchants where there have been some issues and problems. We're grateful that Grove Construction came in and was the winning bidder and came in within the cost that we needed. They have done some initial work with moving of gas lines and some asbestos removal up on top on the roof. They will be continuing their work in the spring and then bringing in their equipment to do the main. And just to let you know, if you follow, it's not all black, but if you follow quite a bit of the black part of the roof there, you probably get a pretty good idea of where your concourse is at. It's the concourse that we're dealing with and working with in this project. The new police station, of course, we had announced that we were going to do a study, and just mentioned earlier today that we're doing the request for proposal. The money was approved by City Council, and so we are moving forward on that draft and expect to get that out, and we will have, of course, the review of the RFP, and then we will get going on the study. So we're taking the council's direction and moving it along. There are several projects. There was a question earlier about Ellicott Station. I think we've answered some of those. Cars, I honestly haven't heard any updates lately. Ellicott Place, Healthy Living Campus. The Healthy Living Campus, we're going to be trying to get a meeting with Dan Ireland and Rob Walker from the YMCA. But the unofficial updates that we have from them is that their design is nearing completion. They are working together with the state agencies. A recent grant that the hospital got for, I think it was $7.8 million, put a little bit of, it was a positive thing for the project, but it caused them to have to relook at their design and work with the other state agencies to make sure everything's meshing together. Theater 56, the lease is fully executed. We have received the rent payment for the first 6 months. They do have a key, and they are in the middle of working on design with the Department of State and with their architect design consultant. The Downtown Building Improvement Fund, we've got projects working through various stages of their permitting and their final approvals of design, because the state wants to make sure that they're approving of basically what's going on, almost literally every I that's dotted and T that's crossed. And it's been quite a learning experience, I have no doubt, for our local businesses. The city center, the feasibility study we've talked about here, and Jackson Square, we did finally get the fully executed agreement in December. The work to create the request for proposal to be able to go in there on feasibility and design is underway. I have spoken with representatives from the Batavia Development Corporation and from the BID, the Batavia Improvement District for Downtown, and told them we will definitely be keeping them in the communication loop, so that as we go forward on this, we have something that works. It's just a saying, a personal saying is do it once, right? And that's what we want to do here. We are also in the middle of, we have several key staff, the finance, administrative services, assistant city manager, consultants, working with the new finance and operations software. Last week they were here working on the new chart of accounts. And they weren't thrilled that I caught them, but I caught them anyway. And they're working on the strings. One of the things that they're working on that we think is going to be helpful is getting the chart of accounts set up so that it more closely mirrors the states, making it a little bit easier for our, hopefully, when we get this done, making it easier for our finance people to be able to prepare their reports, get them out, or at least be tracking things in a manner that the state comptroller's office is also tracking them. We've got trainings that continue to go on, obviously, as we get new employees. They go to academies, they do other things. They've got ERT trainings, fire, public works, making sure that they keep their certifications and those types of things going. Our concern is here, obviously, about industry standard to best in class, showing, good quality work, good quality employees, and good quality and qualifications of those that we interview to hire. Finance, we were very pleased to receive the budget award again this year, and we received high marks, probably some of the best compliments that have been received on the budget. So we're very pleased with that. We haven't heard yet on the city's annual financial report yet, but we're waiting to see how that one comes out. But it is nice every once in a while to have the peers take a look at and recognize the quality of the work. And it's several people on a team, really, that puts this together. It's not one person that does this. And improving customer service is something we always need to strive on, and it's been a goal that, honestly, that I've had on agendas going back a dozen, 24 more years. And as long as the city manager stands here, it will continue to be a goal. There's another saying that if you're not moving forward, if you think you're standing still, you're probably actually moving backwards, or the rest of the world is getting ahead of you, and you're not, and then you're in a position to have to play catch up. So trying to get ourselves always into a position of recognizing that we have the business of the city, and frankly, the business of the city is a moot point if nobody's living in the city. So there are customers, we need to take care of them. We have a green light, hopefully, from the council president to go on to the proposed budget. I wanted to make a note on fuel prices here at the beginning, and the reason I am is because a good chunk of the city's sales and use tax revenue is driven by fuel prices. I wanted to show what the average was at this time last year in January 13th versus this time this year. We're showing a 9% higher right now. They were actually expecting a lower, but the recent activities over in the Middle East have driven what the economists are calling a temporary, stay or a type of a stay or a stoppage and reduction, because this is a time of year when gas prices would typically come down, but for the various circumstances, right now they're holding steady. These are the basic revenues areas for the general water, wastewater, and city center funds. These are the major funds. There are other funds that we have that deal with things like health care and workers' compensation and capital and things that we need to make sure we keep money separate. But these are the major areas for operations here in the city. Our general fund revenues, going specifically into them, at the suggestion of staff, we put numbers embedded in the bar graphs, showing you that our progressions with sales and other taxes, real property taxes, federal and state sources, and other revenues. You can see that we've had, since 16-17, not a huge, but a fairly steady increase in the revenues for the city. Sales and other taxes in 2021, this is the projection that we are looking at. Our projection is a little bit lower than the county's. We're staying a little bit more conservative. Sales and other taxes, we hear about the sales and use tax, but there is also the utilities receipts tax and the franchise fees on cable services. And cable service, sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down. Right now it's just kind of holding steady. So we're looking at between, close to 6.9 million on the sales and other taxes right now. This is where the property tax rates come in. We are suggesting a 0.97% upward adjustment on the property tax to be able to deal with some specific expenses, and we have those, and we can go into those, and we'll go into those specifically in the budget workshops. One of the things that we were fortunate on is in taking a look at the comparisons of where the property tax cap stands in comparison to the actual levies is that the property tax this year, the actual assessed value rose a little over 16 million. And because of that, that put the city in a position to be closer to the tax cap without having to raise rates significantly. We also wanted to make sure you had a comparison of just exactly what actions were taken by the council. Obviously, 2021 is proposed. These are the other actions that were taken in the previous 4 years in relationship to property tax rate and also in relationship to the levy and how close or far apart. And it almost seems like it varies based on need and circumstance with the city council. This is a graphic representation to show just basically, how close or far apart comparisons are of the actual levies that the council has adopted and the proposed levy versus where the actual caps stand in relationship to state law. And for those who don't remember, state law is very clear that it's either the lesser of 2% or the rate of inflation is the maximum increase on any type of a levy. And that does not tie to the rate, it ties to the levy amount. So the rates actually get adjusted after the budget is done. They actually get adjusted to match or meet up with the levy amount that the city council proposes. This chart shows you how we're comparing with the city here together with the county and the town. The town, obviously, with several of those big box stores, saw some large increases in taxable assessed value. But I would like to note between 17 and 18 and in between 2019 and 20, the city, between those 2 years, achieved about $39 million in improvement in taxable assessed value. And what that actually means is there's a couple of things. One of them is existing people who improve their properties. Another one is businesses that expand. Another one is people who will take what they call the zombie houses, or even existing property owners that flip their house and actually bring it. And I talked with the assessor's office and asked them what drove it this time, because we knew what drove the last one. It was privatizing the nursing home. This time, they said it was an across-the-city increase in the values of different residential and commercial properties, and that is a sign of some business expansion. That is a sign of people in the residential areas starting to improve the value of their homes, and it also obviously is driven somewhat by sales demand too. What are we going to be trying to do to improve the base? Because that's one of the ways you grow revenues is improve your base. The downtown revitalization project, as the council president and all members of council said very well, 2020 needs to be the year of shovels in the ground. And that's what we need, is we need to see these projects moving from the planned or in progress into getting toward that completion stage, so that now some of them obviously are dealing with tax incentives, some of them are not. There are some companies that just feel that they have the capital and they're just doing what they feel they need to do business-wise. Another one is over in the brownfield sites. That's where one of the grants that we got, we think we may be helpful here, and we thank the Batavia Development Corporation for their help, particularly with putting together the language and submitting on that grant, because it's one that's going to help us with pre-development and talking about some of these areas in what we call the brownfield opportunity area sites. And that's something that's really important. We have over 1 million square feet of building space in an area that's decaying right down here near Harvester. And we've got some other areas that are starting to get older. And we know that it's a high value area, and we're going to have to, and in your budget books you'll see we've got a little bit more discussion on that. We also talked about private investment that moves the city center properties back into private ownership. This, from a conservative point of view, and I said that so that I wouldn't say that I was speaking specifically for all members of City Council. From a conservative point of view, putting these properties that are supposed to be for commercial or retail back into the hands of the private sector is a high priority for this office. Getting those back and productive, people using them, Again, that's part of growing our base. This is one of the areas that's over here. I think this is over here near where the Sonny's restaurant is. And this is one of those that the city actually has and had acquired through tax foreclosure. We have some other areas in developing on vacant land. We do have some vacant land in the city. Reclaiming abandoned, neglected, and aging residential properties continues to be a priority. And now we're getting into some of the numbers. This current fiscal year, the unappropriated fund balance, which is that set of money that's in the bank for the general fund, that is not assigned, appropriated for expenditure. Last year we looked at $275,000. This year we're looking at $259,100. Our goal is every year to do some type of a step down of reliance. There are stable revenues, and then there are revenues that change depending on the economic conditions of the community or the revenues, situations, or circumstances of the city. And this is one of those. Transfers from the water fund, we looked at a $25,000 step down on this one coming in. Workers' compensation costs. Your workers' compensation costs, as we noticed, our actuals in 16-17 were quite high, and in talking to a couple of the staff, that was part of what drove the move to start getting, in-house, self-funded workers' compensation. You can see that so far, with the high of $273,000 in the 18-19 fiscal year, that we're looking lower. You never know. I am going to tell you that this does include stop-loss insurance. We considered reducing it or taking it off. Our insurance advisor strongly recommended against it. They said, all you have to have is one catastrophe with 2 people with a major injury, and you're stuck. So as some financial protection, we are recommending that stay in the budget. And again, 2021, we won't know those numbers until the year closes. Healthcare fund costs, this is not strictly premiums. There are other costs that are associated with healthcare. One of the things that came in the financial committee, members of council that were sitting on the financial committee will know, that we had a situation where they said that we had to bring in and account for in the budget healthcare costs for retired employees. And it was a fairly sizable chunk of money, and that's helping to drive some of that cost up, and that's why you're seeing a cost that's starting to rise here. The premium costs actually themselves are running at about increase this year is about 5%, which is in with the market rate. State retirement costs, we're projecting a little bit higher this year. We have some individuals that have retired, and we have some other individuals that are reaching their 30-year marks and are looking at retirement this year. We know that this varies. It's very difficult to figure out where we go. We actually under-projected in 16-17 the cost, and in the 3 years since, we have over-projected on the cost a little bit. Frankly, from a business standpoint, it makes sense to overestimate on the cost a little bit here. Otherwise, you get caught short. Capital expenditures. We don't have a lot of big ticket items, but we have a number of items that we're dealing with. The Dwyer Stadium, as you know, we're dealing with, this is dealing with, as I remember, and Matt can correct me if I'm wrong, parts of the funds that were approved by council that weren't expended over in this last year. Over at the ice arena, there's some money that we have in reserves and that we need to take care of some issues. I'm sure that there are some in here that would agree. Some of those, a couple of the doors, a couple of the bathrooms, and that type of a thing definitely need some help. So we're going to be looking at that. And outside lighting, one of the things that we're doing at City Hall here, or in the city, is we're converting as we can and can afford it over to LED lighting. It's less expensive on our electric bill. So as we can do that, it's a capital investment that results in down the road operational cost savings. Fire station is continuing, as is the Bureau of Maintenance. Those designs are nearing completion, and they're expecting start of remodeling and renovation on those two facilities this spring. Redfield Pillars, construction is ongoing. My understanding is they were just moving to the other side of the street. And yes, we did receive permission from the last property owner to be able to go on there and do it over there on the east side. So Public Works has been very busy. Obviously, we've got another we have another snowplow that's aging, and they have asked. Was some money. It's approximately $225,000 that we had received from back payments from the state in the previous year, and that's where it's coming from, that we feel that we have the ability to be able to replace an aging snowplow. Inspection department, yeah, they do a very good job of taking care of vehicles, so when they say a vehicle's done, in my opinion, it's done. A couple of them that were added in here. At the last minute, our Public Works got some numbers. Matt has talked to you about the lead water line replacement. One thing he hasn't mentioned is Franklin Street sewer line improvements, and I think there's some improvement, and in fact I know there's improvements also in Richmond with sewer line that's going to be going on as part of that project. This year will also be a year that we get 3 or 4 parking lots cleaned up with funds that have been set aside and reserved for that. And we're still going to be continuing on sidewalks. We did over 2 miles of sidewalk in 2019. We won't be doing that much in 2020, but we'll still be doing a fairly substantial amount. This is a look at the proposed assignments to reserves. One of the things we're doing this year is proposing taking some unassigned cash that's sitting in one of the insurance funds, in this case the health care insurance fund, and popping it up there and getting into reserves, make sure that it's committed to health care, because those costs are not going to go down, and keeping ourselves in a good position. Another thing that this does for us is it shows a sign of fiscal or financial strength to the lending institutions in our preparations for going to bond for a police station. And that gets us into the debt. We had originally projected in last year in the numbers in talking with the foundation, with the Municipal Solutions, who's the consultants that work with us on borrowing and bonds, that it was looking like 22-23 with a significant drop. Now it's looking like toward the end of fiscal year 21-22, we could see a potential drop of 48% in our debt service load, which means that obviously that we will be in a position, if this continues in the 21-22 fiscal year, to be able to be talking about how, when, where on bonding for the police station. Part of the reason for this is favorable interest rates. Another part of the reason for this is because of our ability to pay off a couple of short-term bond anticipation note loans early. And because we've done that, I think we put ourselves in a better debt load situation than we were a year ago. This is what they call the level debt service. Whatever you're taking out, of your operations and maintenance and capital expenditures and putting toward debt or putting in reserves for spending at a later time is all part of what's called level debt. We're just a little bit over, I think it's about $918,000 approximately, is where our debt is leveled off at and has been leveled off at for a few years. And this is where we're looking at it coming down. And when we're dealing with ratings agencies like Moody's, they like to see these kinds of graphics and that, to see what we're doing and how we're handling our situation. A sign of financial strength for a public body is when we show an ability to be able to set money aside and be able to handle a certain level, obviously without going beyond our means. Consistent with the adopted plan on the water rates, water rate adjustment is 19 cents or 3.5%. Matt, I triple-checked the math on that one. And 60 cents per quarter impact to a typical residential customer with a 5/8-inch meter. We always add those qualifiers in there because you have different sizes of meters for commercial, residential. We wanted to give you some type of a typical range. Now, the budget is it's very assertive toward wanting to get development moving and off the ground. It's toward making sure we have quality in relationship to our, one of the things that's in the strategic priorities is what's called succession planning. And it's very important to be able to have ourselves in a good position to attract good talent and to keep them without breaking the bank. That's the challenge. That's always the challenge of a city manager. He sits there and he's sitting there and he's on both sides of the chessboard playing the white and black pieces at the same time and wanting to make sure somehow that this all comes together and balances together. So that's what we have for right now, and stand for any questions. I know that we'll be bringing this up in the workshop, and one other thing, when you get back up to the table, I know that there are a couple of people, relationship to the schedule for the budget workshops, that have conflicts, so I thought I better make sure I got that out there.
Okay, moving on to Resolution 3, 2020. Ms. Pacino.
Thank you, Council President. I move a resolution authorizing the Batavia Revolving Loan Fund Grant Award and authorizing execution of a participation agreement.
And this is involving the GOAR, right? Correct.
Yes.
Seconded by Mr. Bykowski. Any questions or concerns? Okay, call the roll, please.
Councilmember Pacino?
Yes.
Canali?
Yes.
Briggs?
Yes.
Christian?
Yes.
Karas?
Yes.
Bayakowski? Jankowski?
Yes.
Veely?
Yes.
Resolution 4, 2020, Mr. Veely.
Thank you, Council President. I move a resolution to amend the 2019-2020 budget to reflect the receipt of $300,000 from New York State to Main Street grant.
Seconded by Ms. Briggs. Questions or concerns? Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Veely?
Yes.
Pacino?
Yes.
Canali?
Yes.
Briggs?
Yes.
Christian?
Yes.
Karas?
Yes.
Bayakowski?
Yes.
Jankowski?
Yes. Resolution 5, 2020, Mr. Canali.
Thank you, Council President. I move a resolution to authorize the Batavia Development Corporation to administer the 2020 New York Main Street grant.
Seconded by Mr. Veely. Any questions or concerns? Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Canali?
Yes.
Briggs?
Yes.
Christian?
Yes.
Karas?
Yes.
Bayakowski?
Yes.
Jankowski?
Yes.
Veely?
Yes.
Pacino?
Yes.
And Resolution 6, 2020, Ms. Christian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move a resolution appointing part-time city court judge, amended resolution from 134-2019.
Seconded by Mr. Bykowski. Any questions or concerns? Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Christian?
Yes.
Karas?
Yes.
Bayakowski?
Yes.
Jankowski?
Yes.
Veely? Pacino?
Yes.
Canali?
Yes.
Briggs?
Hey, take us into executive session, please.
Certainly. Whereas Article 7, Section 105(1)H of the Public Officers Law permits the legislative body of the municipality to enter into executive session to discuss the proposed acquisition, sale, or lease of real property, or the proposed acquisition of securities, or sale or exchange of securities held by such public body, but only when publicity would substantially affect the value thereof. Whereas Article 7, Section 105(1)F of the Public Officers Law permits the legislative body of the municipality to enter into executive session to discuss the medical, financial, credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation. Now therefore be it resolved by the council of the city of Batavia that upon approval of this motion, the city council does hereby enter into executive session.
Seconded by? Councilman Christian. Go ahead.
Excuse me, Council President. There was another matter that came up during the course of the week that was, I believe, discussed with City Manager and Council President relative to an additional collective bargaining matter. So we would maybe respectfully suggest that that be amended to include executive session relative to collective bargaining matters.
Okay. Yeah, that came up very recently, like last day or so. So that's also going to be discussed as a collective bargaining thing as well. Right.
To the extent that there was a motion and a second, I would just ask that that amendment be made by way of a motion.
So I move that we make that amendment and include collective bargaining to that.
Okay.
I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. Canali. So the amended executive session, any other discussion on that? Okay, call the roll, please.
Council President Jankowski.
Yes.
Councilmember Veely.
Yes.
Casino.
Yes.
Canali.
Yes.
Briggs. Christian.
Yes.
Karas.
Yes.
Bykowski.
Yes.
Okay, we now move to executive session.
Go see the fire chief.